And I'm Katharina, 34 years old, and today is my son Noah's 7th birthday. I've spent weeks planning every detail from the dinosaur-themed decorations to his favourite chocolate cake recipe. My husband Michael thinks I'm going overboard, but Noah is our world. If only my mother-in-law Eleanor would stop calling with her suggestions. Yesterday, she insisted our home wasn't suitable for a proper celebration. Little did I know her criticisms were just the beginning. Before I continue my story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how one sentence from me silenced an entire room. Growing up in a middle-class family in suburban Portland, I learnt the value of hard work from an early age. My parents weren't wealthy, but they made sure I had everything I needed. By 16, I was working part-time at the local bookstore to save for college. Those years shaped me into a practical, independent woman who appreciated simple joys and meaningful connections. I met Michael 10 years ago while working at Riverfront Coffee to pay my way through nursing school. He was the quiet, handsome customer who came in every Tuesday and Thursday ordering the same thing, a medium Americano with room for cream. When he finally asked me out after months of shy smiles, I was charmed by his genuine nature and warmth. Michael came from a very different world. His family owned Sullivan Developments, one of the largest real estate companies in the Pacific Northwest. The Sullivans had old money and the social standing that came with it. Despite his privileged upbringing, Michael was down to earth and kind. He worked for his father's company, but was refreshingly free of entitlement. His mother, Eleanor, however, was another story entirely. From our first meeting, her disapproval was palpable. She examined me like a specimen under a microscope, noting my department store dress and practical shoes with the slightest curl of her lip. "And what do your parents do, dear?" she had asked in that first conversation, her voice dripping with anticipated disappointment. When I told her my father was a high school math teacher and my mother a librarian, Eleanor had smiled thinly and said, "How quaint." That set the tone for our relationship. In her eyes, I would never be good enough for her son. Not refined enough, not wealthy enough, not from the right family. Despite Eleanor's clear disapproval, Michael and I built a life together. We bought a modest 3-bedroom home in a good neighborhood decorated with furniture we loved rather than what impressed others. I finished my nursing degree and worked at Portland Memorial Hospital in the pediatric ward. Michael continued at his father's company, steadily advancing through merit rather than nepotism. When Noah came along 7 years ago, our world changed in the most wonderful way. He was a perfect blend of us both. Michael's thoughtful brown eyes and my unruly dark curls. Smart, curious, and kind-hearted Noah brought joy to everyone who knew him. Everyone except Eleanor, who seemed determined to find fault with how we were raising him. "Surely you don't let him wear those off-brand sneakers to school? Or wouldn't he benefit from French lessons at this age?" The Abernathy children started at 3. These comments came frequently, each one a small cut to my confidence as a mother. Michael's response to his mother's behaviour was what frustrated me most. He would sigh, give me an apologetic look, but rarely challenged her directly. "That's just Mum being Mom," he'd say with a shrug. "She means well." But did she? I often wondered if Michael truly didn't see the pattern of undermining and criticism, or if he simply chose the path of least resistance. Over the years, I developed strategies for dealing with Eleanor. Limited visits, carefully planned conversations, and a mental shield against her barbs. For Noah's sake, I maintained the appearance of family harmony. He deserved to know his grandparents even if one of them was difficult. I hoped, perhaps naively, that Noah's birthday party would be different. A chance for our families to come together in celebration of the wonderful boy we all loved. As I put the finishing touches on the party plans, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and dread. Excitement for Noah's joy when he saw the dinosaur wonderland I'd created. Dread for Eleanor's inevitable commentary on everything I'd done wrong. Still, I was determined to make this day perfect for my son, no matter what obstacles, or mothers-in-law, stood in my way. The weeks leading up to Noah's birthday were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. I wanted everything to be perfect without breaking our budget. Michael and I had been saving for a family vacation to Disneyland later in the year, so I got creative with the party arrangements. I spent evenings after Noah went to bed crafting paper dinosaurs to hang from the ceiling and painting a Welcome to the Jurassic Period banner for the front door. I found dinosaur-shaped cookie cutters online and practiced until I could make perfect Brontosaurus and T-Rex cookies. The cake was my most ambitious project. 3 tiers with blue frosting for the water, green for land, and tiny plastic dinosaurs arranged in a scene that would make Noah's eyes light up. When Eleanor called to ask about the party plans, I should have known it wouldn't be a simple conversation. We're having it at our house, I explained. I've got a dinosaur theme all planned out. Noah's been obsessed with paleontology since that museum trip last month. Oh, darling, Eleanor's voice dripped with faux concern. Your little house, for 20 children plus adults, it will be so cramped. Why not have it at our home? We have the garden and the pool house. That's very kind, I replied carefully, but Noah specifically asked to have it at home. He wants to show his friends his bedroom and his fossil collection. Well, if you insist, Eleanor sighed dramatically, though I can't imagine why you'd choose to squeeze everyone into that space when there are better options. The calls continued as the party approached, Eleanor questioning my choice of time. 3 o'clock children are so cranky after naps. My menu plans, hot dogs, not very sophisticated Katerina. And even the guest list. You didn't invite the Prescotts. Their son is the same age as Noah. Such good connections for his future. 3 days before the party, Eleanor called with her compromise. I've spoken with Margot at Divine Events, she announced. They'll handle the catering, my treat. That's really not necessary, I protested. I've already planned a menu that Noah loves. Nonsense. What kind of grandmother would I be if I didn't contribute? Besides, your homemade food is charming, but this is a special occasion. Before I could object further, she added, Michael agrees it's for the best. When I confronted Michael that evening, he had the grace to look sheepish. I thought it would take some pressure off you, he explained. And you know how Mom gets when she's set on something. But this is Noah's party, not hers, I argued. He wanted my homemade pizza bites and dinosaur cookies. We can still have those too, Michael offered. Just think of Mom's catering as supplemental. I felt the familiar frustration rising. Michael always took the path of least resistance with his mother, leaving me to either be the bad guy or silently accept her interference. This time I reluctantly agreed to the catering, but drew the line at the cake. That 3-tiered dinosaur creation was my labor of love for Noah, and no fancy bakery confection would replace it. The morning of the party arrived, and I was up at dawn putting final touches on decorations and setting up the backyard with activity stations. We'd planned for fossil digging, chocolate chips and cookies, dinosaur egg hunts, decorated plastic eggs with small toys inside, and a volcanic eruption science demonstration. Just as I finished arranging the gift table, the doorbell rang. 3 hours early, Eleanor stood on our doorstep with Frances, her personal assistant, both carrying boxes of supplies. I thought you could use some help, Eleanor announced, sweeping past me into the house. Frances put those decorations in the living room. The caterers will arrive at 2. We already have decorations, I said, gesturing to the handmade dinosaurs and banners. Eleanor glanced around with barely concealed distaste. Yes, I see your attempts, but I brought some professional touches. Crystal punch bowls, proper linens for the tables. Oh, and look at these napkins I found. Real cloth with embroidered dinosaurs. Much better than those paper things you've set out. For the next 2 hours, I watched as Eleanor rearranged my carefully planned setup, directing Frances to move tables, replace my decorations with her upgraded versions, and essentially transform my cozy, kid-friendly dinosaur party into something that belonged in a society magazine. Michael arrived home from picking up the ice and balloons to find me near tears in the kitchen. Your mother is taking over, I whispered urgently. This isn't what Noah wanted. He peeked into the living room where Eleanor was instructing Frances to replace my handmade welcome sign with an elaborate professional banner. It does look more polished, he offered weakly. Michael, that's not the point, I hissed in. This is Noah's day, not a showcase for your mother's taste. Before he could respond, Noah burst through the back door, returning from a morning playdate at the neighbor's house. His eyes widened at the transformation taking place. Wow, this looks different, he said, his expression uncertain. Grandma Eleanor brought some special decorations, I explained, forcing a smile. What do you think? Noah looked around at the crystal bowls and elegant arrangements that had replaced my handmade touches. It's fancy, he said finally. Then in a smaller voice added, but where are the dinosaurs you made? The ones with my handprints on them. As I saw the confusion and disappointment in my son's eyes, I felt the first real stirrings of anger. This was supposed to be his perfect day, filled with things that made him happy, not a showcase for Eleanor's idea of what a proper party should be. With guests due to arrive in less than an hour, I faced a choice: continue accommodating Eleanor's takeover or stand my ground for Noah's sake. The anxiety knotted in my stomach as I realized this birthday party had become about much more than cake and decorations. It was about who controlled our family narrative and whether I had the courage to fight for the celebration my son deserved. At 3 o'clock, the first guests began arriving. Noah dressed in his favorite dinosaur t-shirt and khaki shorts. Eleanor had brought a button-down shirt and bow tie, which I firmly declined, bounced excitedly at the door, eager to greet his friends. Despite the tension with Eleanor, seeing his face light up as his classmates arrived with brightly wrapped packages reminded me what today was really about. "Welcome, welcome!" Eleanor's voice rang out as she positioned herself by the door, greeting parents as though she were the hostess. "So lovely to see you all. Please come in. Refreshments are in the garden." I stood nearby, smiling and thanking people for coming while trying not to let my irritation show. Several parents looked confused about who was actually hosting the party. Noah's teacher, Ms. Jacobs, gave me a questioning glance as Eleanor took her coat and directed her to the backyard with the air of a society hostess. "That's my grandmother," I overheard Noah explaining to his friend Tyler. "She likes fancy stuff, but Mom made a dinosaur cake that looks super cool." Michael circulated among the guests, charming and friendly, as always, seemingly oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. When I caught his eye and nodded significantly toward his mother, who was now instructing the caterers on proper hors d'oeuvre replacement, he just shrugged with a helpless smile. The party activities began well enough. The children were delighted with the fossil dig excavating chocolate chips from cookies with little brushes like real paleontologists. Eleanor stood back watching with thinly veiled distaste as children got crumbs and chocolate on their clothes. "In my day, children's parties involved proper games with rules," she murmured to another grandmother. "All this messy play seems rather unstructured." I pretended not to hear as I helped a little girl carefully brush away cookie crumbs to reveal her fossil. The joy on the children's faces was validation enough. The volcanic eruption demonstration was a huge hit with baking soda and vinegar, creating a satisfying red lava flow down the papier-mâché mountain I'd spent a week crafting. The children squealed with delight, and even some of the parents joined in the excitement. "Isn't that something?" Eleanor said loudly, "though I do hope that concoction won't stain the patio stones. They look like they might be porous." I noticed a few parents exchanging glances at Eleanor's comment, and my friend Jenna gave me a sympathetic eye roll behind Eleanor's back. At least I wasn't the only one who found her behavior grating. When it came time for presents, Eleanor positioned herself next to Noah as if she were the co-host of this milestone. The children gathered in a circle while Noah opened his gifts with enthusiasm, thanking each friend sincerely as Michael snapped photos. Noah was genuinely appreciative of everything, from Tyler's dinosaur action figure to Emma's handmade fossil identification book. Each gift was met with authentic excitement, revealing the gracious nature we'd worked hard to foster in our son. Then came Eleanor's present, an enormous box wrapped in expensive silver paper with a massive blue bow. "This one's special," she announced to the room, "from Grandma and Grandpa Sullivan." Noah tore into the package with the same enthusiasm he'd shown for his friend's gifts, but as the wrapping fell away, there was an audible gasp from the adults in the room. Inside was a child-sized electric ride-on car. Not just any car, but a miniature Tesla with leather seats and working headlights. It was easily worth more than all the other gifts combined. "It's just like Daddy's," Eleanor proclaimed proudly. Now Noah can drive his own luxury vehicle. Noah's eyes were wide with shock and excitement. What 7-year-old wouldn't be thrilled with such an extravagant gift? But I noticed the uncomfortable shifts of the other parents, and the way some children looked down at their own gifts with sudden uncertainty. "Wow," Noah said, clearly overwhelmed. "Thank you, Grandma." Eleanor beamed triumphantly around the room. "Nothing but the best for my grandson. The other gifts are lovely too, of course," she added with a dismissive wave that undercut her words entirely. Michael, sensing the awkwardness, quickly suggested, "Let's take it out to the driveway later, buddy. Right now, let's finish opening your other presents." But the damage was done. The simple joy of the gift opening had been overshadowed by Eleanor's ostentatious display. I caught Michael's eye, silently communicating my frustration, but he just gave me that same helpless shrug that was becoming infuriatingly familiar. As Noah continued opening presents with diminished enthusiasm, I slipped away to check on the cake in the refrigerator. My 3-tiered dinosaur masterpiece was ready to be brought out, the culmination of hours of work and love designed specifically to make Noah smile. But when I opened the refrigerator door, I found my cake pushed to the back, partially hidden behind a large white bakery box that hadn't been there earlier. With a sinking feeling, I opened the box to find an elaborate, professionally made cake with hand-painted fondant dinosaurs and Noah's name in gold lettering. I stood staring at this unwelcome surprise, feeling my carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. This party was slipping further and further away from the warm personal celebration I'd planned for my son. Each time I turned around, Eleanor had replaced something meaningful with something better, as if my efforts as Noah's mother weren't quite good enough. The sounds of children's laughter floated in from the backyard, reminding me that despite everything, Noah was having fun with his friends. That's what mattered most. Taking a deep breath, I closed the refrigerator and returned to the party, unaware that the worst of Eleanor's interference was yet to come. After the presents were opened, the children scattered to play with Noah's new toys, while the adults mingled. I circulated among the guests, making sure everyone had refreshments and enjoying brief conversations with the other parents. Several complimented the creative activities and the beautiful home, which momentarily lifted my spirits despite Eleanor's interventions. Time for cake, Eleanor announced suddenly, clapping her hands for attention before I could indicate that I was ready. Everyone gathered around the table. I hurried toward the kitchen, intending to retrieve my dinosaur creation, but Eleanor intercepted me in the hallway. "I've already asked Frances to bring out the cake," she said with a self-satisfied smile. "Which cake?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. "The proper one, of course. From Bellini's Bakery. They do all the finest events in Portland." I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. "Eleanor, I made Noah a special dinosaur cake. He's been looking forward to it for weeks." She patted my arm condescendingly. "Your homemade effort was sweet, Katerina, but this is a special occasion. I wanted Noah to have something extraordinary." Before I could respond, Frances emerged from the kitchen carrying the elaborate bakery cake, complete with sparkler candles that sent showers of gold sparks into the air. The children gasped in appreciation, gathering around as Frances set it on the table. "Where's Mom's cake?" Noah's voice cut through the excited chatter. He was looking around in confusion. "You said you made a dinosaur lake with blue frosting." All eyes turned to me, including Eleanor's triumphant gaze. "Well," Eleanor interjected before I could speak, "Grandma brought a proper cake from the best bakery in town. Isn't it magnificent? Much better than a simple homemade one." Noah's face fell and I saw his bottom lip quiver slightly. "But I wanted Mom's cake. She worked really hard on it." Michael finally seemed to realize the situation, stepping forward with a forced smile. "Hey, why don't we have both cakes? More cake is always better, right?" "There's hardly room for 2 cakes, Eleanor said dismissively. "And the children have already seen this one. It would be rather anticlimactic to bring out a simpler version now." I felt something snap inside me as I saw the disappointment on Noah's face. Without a word, I turned and went to the kitchen, returning moments later with my 3-tiered creation. It wasn't as polished as the bakery cake, but I had poured my heart into it. The blue water frosting swirled around green land, where tiny plastic dinosaurs created a scene that told a story. "Noah," I said gently, placing my cake beside the fancy one, "you can choose which cake you'd like for your birthday." The room went quiet as Noah looked between the 2 cakes. One professional and perfect, the other clearly made with love by his mother's hands. Without hesitation, he pointed to mine. "I want Mom's cake. She made the blue water just like we talked about." Eleanor's face tightened with displeasure. "Don't be silly, Noah. Look at the beautiful fondant work on this one. It's hand-painted by a professional artist." "I want Mom's cake," Noah repeated more firmly. I began cutting my cake, serving Noah the first piece with the T-Rex, just as he'd requested weeks ago. Eleanor stood rigidly beside the rejected bakery cake, her expression darkening by the second. "Katharina, get some plates for the adults," she commanded sharply. "And we'll need forks, not those plastic things you've set out." I hesitated, then continued serving the children while responding, "The plates and utensils are right there on the table, Eleanor." "Well, we need more napkins then," she insisted. "And someone should be passing around drinks to the adults." As I continued serving cake, Eleanor continued issuing directives, her voice growing increasingly imperious. "Katerina, the ice is melting in the cooler. Katharina, some of the children need seconds. Katerina, there's frosting on the tablecloth." I could feel the eyes of the other parents on us, the uncomfortable awareness of witnesses to family tension. Michael stood frozen, glancing between his mother and me like a spectator at a tennis match. Finally, as I was handing a slice of cake to Ms. Jacobs, Eleanor's voice cut across the chatter once more. "Katharina, when you're done playing hostess, the garbage needs emptying. The caterer's left quite a mess in the kitchen. I straightened up slowly, cake service still in hand. "I'll get to it after we're done with the cake, Eleanor." "Really, dear," she continued loud enough for nearby guests to hear clearly, "you should attend to it now before it overflows. The kitchen is beginning to look quite shabby." I noticed Noah watching this exchange, his happy expression faltering. Other children had paused in their cake eating, sensing the adult tension in the air. "Mom, maybe we should," Michael began, but Eleanor cut him off. "Michael, your wife seems to have forgotten her responsibilities. Someone needs to maintain standards." The party had gone completely silent, now every adult and child watching the drama unfold. Noah looked on the verge of tears, his special moment once again overshadowed by his grandmother's behavior. That's when Eleanor delivered the line that would change everything. "After all," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand, "you're nothing but a servant here anyway." The silence that followed Eleanor's words was absolute. Even the youngest children seemed to sense the gravity of what had just been said. Noah's eyes widened in confusion and distress, darting between his grandmother and me. Michael stood frozen, his face a mask of shock. In that suspended moment, a strange calm settled over me. All the years of subtle slights, undermining comments, and passive-aggressive behavior crystallized into perfect clarity. This wasn't about cake or decorations or even this particular day. This was about respect, not just for me, but for the family Michael and I had built together. I set down the cake server, deliberately wiped my hands on a napkin, and turned to face Eleanor. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. I could have yelled. I could have created a scene that would have ruined Noah's birthday entirely. Instead, I found myself speaking in a measured, quiet tone that somehow carried to every corner of the suddenly silent room. "In this house, I am a mother, a wife, and a woman who deserves respect. You are welcome as family, but only if you can remember that." Eleanor's face registered shock, then outrage. She clearly hadn't expected me to respond at all, let alone with such composed dignity. She was accustomed to people, especially Michael, yielding to her will. "Well," she sputtered, colour rising in her cheeks, "I have never been so insulted." "That's ironic," said Jenna under her breath, though loud enough for those nearby to hear. A few parents suppressed smiles. Eleanor looked around the room, seemingly expecting others to rally to her defence. Instead, she was met with uncomfortable glances and a few openly supportive looks directed at me. Michael finally found his voice. "Mum," he said, stepping forward to stand beside me. "Katerina is right. That was completely out of line." Eleanor's eyes widened at this unexpected betrayal from her son. "Michael, I was only trying to help make this party a success. By calling my wife a servant," Michael's voice was quiet but firm, "that's not helping Mom. That's hurtful and disrespectful." Noah, who had been watching this adult drama unfold with increasing distress, suddenly broke away from the table and ran to wrap his arms around my waist. "My mom is not a servant," he said with all the righteous indignation a 7-year-old could muster. "She's the best mom ever, and she makes the best cakes, and you made her sad on my birthday." The simple, heartfelt defense from my son nearly broke my composure. I put my arm around his shoulders, drawing strength from his unconditional love. Eleanor looked around the room once more, finally registering that she had no allies in this battle. Her face shifted through several expressions: shock, anger, embarrassment, before settling into a cold mask of dignity. "I can see I'm not appreciated here," she said stiffly. "Francis, get my things, we're leaving." As Francis scurried to collect Eleanor's purse and wrap, an awkward silence descended again. Eleanor moved toward the door with regal posture, every inch the wounded matriarch. "Noah," she said, pausing by the door, "Grandmother is leaving now. I hope you enjoy your party." The slight pause before the word party managed to convey volumes of disapproval. Noah, still pressed against my side, merely nodded. "Bye, Grandma." After Eleanor swept out with Francis trailing behind the remaining guests, exchanged glances, unsure how to proceed. I took a deep breath, determined not to let this incident ruin Noah's special day. "Who wants to see the dinosaur egg hunt?" I asked brightly. "I've hidden special eggs all through the backyard." The children's excitement instantly returned, and they rushed toward the back door. The adults followed more slowly, several pausing to squeeze my arm or offer quiet words of support. "That woman is a piece of work," Noah's friend Tyler's mum whispered. "You handled that with incredible grace," added Ms. Jacobs. Jenna gave me a quick hug. "I've been wanting to say something like that to my mother-in-law for years. You're my hero." As the party resumed outside, Michael hung back, his expression a mixture of apology and admiration. "Kat," he began, I'm so sorry. I should have stepped in sooner. Yes, you should have. I agreed, not willing to immediately absolve him of his part in the pattern that had led to this moment. You were amazing, he continued. What you said, it was perfect. Not angry, not mean, just true. I nodded, still processing the confrontation and its aftermath. We'll talk about it later. Right now, Noah needs his birthday to be about him again, not about adult drama. Michael nodded, reaching for my hand. You're right. And for what it's worth, your cake is definitely better. That drew a small smile from me, and together we headed out to the backyard, where children were excitedly hunting for dinosaur eggs among the shrubs and garden ornaments. Noah spotted us and waved enthusiastically, his grandmother's dramatic exit already fading in importance compared to the thrill of finding hidden treasures. As I watched our son happily engaged with his friends, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Lingering anger, yes, but also a surprising sense of liberation. For years I had walked on eggshells around Eleanor, accepting her subtle put-downs to keep the peace. With one sentence, one moment of standing my ground, something fundamental had shifted. Whatever came next in our family dynamics, I knew I would never go back to silently accepting disrespect in my own home. The party continued with games, more cake, and genuine laughter. By the time guests began to leave, Noah was declaring it the best birthday ever. The Eleanor incident apparently overshadowed by dinosaur excavations and egg hunts. Children, I reflected gratefully, were remarkably resilient. As we waved goodbye to the last departing family, I knew the real reckoning was still to come. Eleanor wouldn't simply accept what had happened today, and Michael and I needed to have a serious conversation about boundaries and expectations moving forward. But for now, I allowed myself to savor this small victory, not just standing up to Eleanor, but doing so with dignity and grace in a way that protected what mattered most, the joy and security of our son. In the days following Noah's birthday party, our house felt like the aftermath of a storm. Quieter, somewhat damaged, but with an unexpected clarity in the air. Michael and I moved around each other carefully that first evening, both exhausted from the emotional toll of the day. After Noah was tucked in bed, happily surrounded by his new dinosaur toys, we sat at the kitchen table with cups of tea facing the conversation we could no longer avoid. She's not going to let this go, I said quietly, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Michael nodded, looking more tired than I'd seen him in years. I know. She called 3 times while I was putting Noah to bed. I let it go to voicemail. What are we going to do? Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from moments of deep stress. I don't know, Kat. She's still my mother. And I'm your wife, I said firmly. And what happened today wasn't just about me. Did you see Noah's face when she dismissed the cake I made, when she turned his birthday into a showcase for her wealth and taste? This affects him too. I know, Michael repeated, his voice heavy with guilt. I should have said something sooner. All these years It was easier to let things slide. Easier for whom? I challenged gently. He met my eyes then, really seeing me, perhaps for the first time in this ongoing struggle. Easier for me, he admitted. Not for you, and not for Noah either. That honest acknowledgement felt like the first crack in a dam that had held back years of unspoken tension. For the next 2 hours, Michael and I talked more openly than we had in years about his mother's behaviour, my feelings of being constantly judged and found wanting, and his complicated relationship with his parents. I've always been caught in the middle, he explained. Dad's more reasonable, but he defers to Mum in social matters, and I grew up watching everyone accommodate her demands. It became normal to me. It's not normal, Michael, and it's not healthy for any of us, including her. She's isolated herself with her impossible standards and judgments. By the time we went to bed that night, we had reached an agreement Eleanor would need to apologize and demonstrate genuine respect before she would be welcome in our home again. Michael would communicate this to both his parents, making it clear that this was a boundary we were setting together. The next morning, Eleanor launched her counter-offensive. First came the text to Michael, alternating between wounded innocence, I was only trying to help make the party special, and sharp criticism, your wife has always been overly sensitive. When Michael didn't immediately respond, she escalated to calling his office, his friends, and even my friend Jenna, attempting to gather allies and pressure us to back down. No one took her side. A large bouquet of expensive flowers arrived at our doorstep 3 days after the party. Not with an apology, but with a card reading, "When you're ready to discuss this, rationally call me. E." The flowers went directly into the compost bin. A week passed then too. Michael spoke briefly with his father, who seemed caught in his usual position between his wife's demands and his son's needs. "Your mother is very upset," he reported. "Maybe if Katharina would just call her." "Dad, Mom called Kat a servant in front of our son and all his friends," Michael said firmly. "She needs to apologize sincerely, not just expect us to pretend it never happened." It wasn't easy for Michael to hold this line. Years of conditioning had taught him to yield to his mother's will to smooth things over at any cost. I watched him struggle with guilt, with doubt, with the deeply ingrained need to please his parents. But he didn't waver, and my respect and love for him deepened as he demonstrated this new strength. Noah, perceptive as always, sensed the tension. "Is Grandma Eleanor mad at us?" he asked one evening as I tucked him in. "Grandma said something very unkind to me at your party," I explained carefully. "Dad and I need her to say sorry before she visits again." He considered this solemnly. "Like when I have to say sorry to Tyler if I break his toys." "Very similar." I agreed. "Even grown-ups need to apologize when they hurt someone's feelings." "Good," he said decisively. "She made you sad on my birthday. That wasn't nice." The simplicity of children's moral reasoning sometimes put adults to shame. 3 weeks after the birthday incident, Michael suggested we try family therapy. "Not with my mother," he clarified quickly. "Just us, you, me and Noah, to help us navigate this situation in the healthiest way possible." I agreed immediately, recognizing that we were in uncharted territory. The weekly sessions with Dr. Landon became a safe space to process the complex emotions stirred up by the confrontation and its aftermath. "You're rewriting a family script that's been running for generations," Dr. Landon explained in one session. "That's incredibly difficult work, but also incredibly valuable. You're not just standing up for yourself, Katharina. You're modeling for Noah what healthy boundaries look like." This perspective helped ease some of my lingering guilt about causing a family rift. I hadn't created the problem, I had simply stopped enabling it. 6 weeks after the party, Eleanor made her first real move toward reconciliation. Though in characteristic fashion, it wasn't straightforward. She invited Michael to lunch alone. He went with our mutual agreement that he wouldn't make any promises on my behalf. He returned looking thoughtful. "She asked what it would take to resolve this unfortunate situation," he reported. "I told her a genuine apology to you would be the start." She didn't like that answer. "What did she say?" "She said she was just trying to help, that you misunderstood her intentions, that she's always been made to feel unwelcome by you." He sighed. "But then when I stood up to leave, she asked me to wait. She said she misses Noah, and she asked if you would meet her for coffee, just the two of you." I considered this request carefully. Part of me wanted to refuse to protect myself from further hurt, but another part recognized this small opening as potentially significant. Eleanor Sullivan did not easily admit to missing anyone or request private meetings to discuss feelings. "I'll think about it," I told Michael. After a few days of reflection and a session with Dr. Landon, I agreed to meet Eleanor at a neutral coffee shop. Michael offered to come, but I decided this conversation needed to happen woman to woman. Eleanor was already seated when I arrived, impeccably dressed, as always, a china cup of tea in front of her. She didn't stand to greet me, but nodded stiffly as I took the seat across from her. For several minutes, we engaged in painfully polite small talk about the weather, the quality of the tea, the new shopping centre being built downtown. Finally, I gently redirected the conversation. "Eleanor, you asked for this meeting. I think we both know it wasn't to discuss the weather forecast." She set down her cup with a controlled movement. "You humiliated me in front of everyone at Noah's party. Kika'n. It wasn't the opening I had hoped for, but at least it was honest." "That wasn't my intention," I replied calmly. I was responding to being called a servant in my own home in front of my son and his friends. Eleanor's lips tightened, but she didn't immediately deny or justify her words. Progress of a sort. "I have always tried to help your family," she said instead, "to give Noah advantages, to show him the finer things." "I understand that's how you see it," I acknowledged. "But when you dismiss my efforts, criticize my home, and undermine my role as Noah's mother, it doesn't feel like help. It feels like you don't respect me or the life Michael and I have chosen." Eleanor looked genuinely surprised at this interpretation. "It's not about respect," she protested. "It's about standards, about giving Noah the best." "The best isn't always the most expensive or the most impressive to others," I said gently. "Sometimes the best is what's made with love, what feels comfortable and true to who we are as a family." Our conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, circling through old grievances and misunderstandings. There were moments of tension, moments of surprising connection, and even a few moments of genuine laughter. Eleanor did not explicitly apologize, but she listened more openly than she ever had before. As we prepared to leave, she said abruptly, "I would like to see Noah and Michael." "I would like that too," I responded. "But Eleanor, things need to be different. I need to know you respect my role in my family and my home." She nodded stiffly, not quite meeting my eyes. "I understand." It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a beginning. The following Sunday, Eleanor came for dinner, alone without Frances or her usual protective armor of gifts and grand gestures. She brought a single item, a photo album of Michael's childhood that Noah had never seen. "I thought Noah might like to see pictures of his father when he was a boy," she said with uncharacteristic diffidence. The evening wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, fleeting expressions of disapproval, quickly masked. But Eleanor made visible efforts to connect with Noah on his terms, asking about his interests, and actually listening to his enthusiastic explanations about dinosaur classification. Before she left, she paused by the door where I stood. "Your home is very warm, Katharina," she said, choosing her words with care. "Noah seems very happy here." Coming from Eleanor, this was tantamount to a glowing endorsement. "Thank you," I replied simply. "He is loved." She nodded once, then added, "Perhaps next time I could bring the ingredients and you could show me how to make that dinosaur cake. For Noah's school bake sale, perhaps." I blinked in surprise at this unprecedented olive branch. "I'd like that, Eleanor." And over the following months, our relationship with Eleanor evolved slowly. There were setbacks, old habits reasserting themselves, moments of tension when her critical nature emerged. But there was also growth. Michael continued to stand firmly with me in maintaining our boundaries. Eleanor gradually learned that respecting our parenting choices didn't mean surrendering her identity or value as a grandmother. A year later, as we prepared for Noah's 8th birthday, the difference was remarkable. Eleanor called to ask what theme Noah had chosen space exploration and what she could contribute that would complement, not replace my plans. She offered to fund a trip to the planetarium for Noah and 5 friends as her gift, an experience rather than an ostentatious object. "And I'll check with you before I finalize anything," she added, a phrase that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. The journey wasn't easy or straightforward. There were difficult conversations, painful realizations, and the slow, sometimes frustrating work of reshaping family dynamics established over decades. But with each small step, our family grew stronger and healthier. I often reflected on that moment at Noah's 7th birthday when one sentence had changed everything. Not because the words themselves held special power, but because they represented my decision to value myself enough to set boundaries, to show my son that respect is something everyone deserves, to demonstrate that love sometimes means standing firm rather than giving in. Eleanor and I will probably never be close friends. Our values and perspectives remain fundamentally different in many ways, but we have found a path to mutual respect that allows Noah to have a relationship with his grandmother, without me sacrificing my dignity or role as his mother. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a relationship is simply to state your truth calmly and with conviction. Not in anger, not to wound, but to establish the ground on which you are willing to stand. In that kitchen, surrounded by dinosaur decorations and birthday cake, I found my voice, not just for myself, but for my family. If you've ever struggled with difficult family dynamics, or found yourself undermined by someone who should support you, I hope my story offers some encouragement. Standing up for yourself doesn't have to mean creating permanent rifts or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it can be the first step toward more authentic, healthier relationships for everyone involved. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member to protect your boundaries? How did you handle it, and what was the outcome? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for listening, and remember, respecting yourself is the foundation of all healthy relationships.